All right, welcome to episode ocho of Adjacent Pod. This season is 10 episodes, and I will tell you, it has gone by incredibly quickly. We're going to take a little break after the 10th episode and come back with a whole new season ready to go. Episode 8 is great because we're kind of starting to round out everything that we've talked about over the last, say, 2 months or so that we've been doing this. Before I jump in and I introduce my guest, I gotta thank our sponsors. Thank you to Treeline Veterinary Cancer Care, boutique cancer care for your dog in a very small, intimate setting. Lalchandani Simon, a healthcare and technology law firm. Thank you to both of those entities for making this first season possible. Could not have been done without you. Thank you to everybody who likes and follows and shares and rates. It's been really humbling to see how fast this has grown, and we're excited. We're going to do a lot more for season 2. We got a producer who knows all the tricks, and so we got a lot of fun things coming in the next few months. So with that, let's jump into the show. And I'll tell you, every time I start a podcast, I kind of try to figure out how this episode fits into everything that we've been talking about over the past 2 months. We started talking with exchanges, then we got deep into regulations. We started talking about NFTs, digital art, Web3 games, and just a whole and regulation and kind of the entrepreneurship and innovation that drives everything. And today we have kind of what I think is the perfect next step, because we're going to talk to Aaron Brogan, founder and managing partner at Brogan Law. Aaron is a former big law guy who went off on his own to start a focused and very specific boutique crypto law firm. And why that's kind of perfect for right now is all the things that we've chatted about. If you're building a project in that space, if your company is trying to move into that space, doing this project or that project, Aaron is the guy for you because he understands all of it. He's got a real broad 1,000-foot view of the entire industry. And I think it's incredibly valuable to have that kind of perspective when you're pursuing a project. So with that, welcome to Aaron Brogan. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm so thrilled to be here. I couldn't have asked for a kinder introduction. I think you nailed it with Brogan Law. We're a small law firm based in New York that covers really the entire cryptocurrency industry. Before I was there, I was in McDermott, I was in Big Law, but we try to bring the Big Law skill set to a smaller law firm package, which I think is very much in demand among many of these startups.
Before we jump in, where do we find you today?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Bushwick.
Look at that,
right around the corner from the former Consensus office.
Nice. So it's crypto till he dies. So tell me something. We're gonna, we know that you worked in big law, but how did you end up working in the crypto space? How did that become a thing for you?
I was really looking for something different, I think. I had been in big law for a few years before I started touching crypto at all. And I got brought in to write a few papers in 2020, 2021 that touched on crypto issues. And I had been a commercial litigator. I'd been representing Johnson & Johnson, ExxonMobil, these big companies. It was really interesting stuff. But when I got put on that, I thought, oh, okay, this stuff has a lot more runway and it's going to give me a lot more opportunity to distinguish myself as a young attorney than I was ever going to get as a commercial litigator at a big firm. I mean, not that commercial litigators don't distinguish themselves. I mean, you can see like Alex Spiro at Quinn has done that, but for the most part, it's just a slower grind on the way up. And when I found crypto, I thought, this is an opportunity where I can really dominate a space, become one of the most knowledgeable people in the space.
So tell me, what did you
Sorry?
do to get smart when you first entered this world?
I read a lot. I bought like 5 books and I just read them cover to cover. I read like every article I could find. Just basically anything that I could read on the topics of like crypto and law, I read when I started out, which I think, within the first year of doing that, I felt like I was pretty knowledgeable in terms of among general lawyers. I thought I was among the most knowledgeable lawyers who weren't specialized yet. And then from there, I was able to get a job doing crypto exclusively. And once I had the job, I mean, you just kind of learn as you go. You're building stuff and you see what comes out of it.
So tell us about that experience. Where were you? Who were you working for? What were you doing when you first started getting your first crypto projects?
Yeah, I started my career at Wallagotchel, so that's where I was. I'd been a commercial litigator for 3, 4 years when I started
For
doing
those
crypto stuff.
non-lawyers, Weil is one of the behemoths, man. They work you to death, but you do some great work for the best clients imaginable.
Yeah, I had some big years at Weil for sure. But it was a great experience for me. But yeah, I started there. I did like a little bit of crypto stuff. There really wasn't a crypto practice. I started looking for a firm that was doing more crypto stuff than Weil was doing. And so
What
that's
year
how I
are we
ended
in
up.
right now? What year are we in right now?
We're like 21. End of 21 is when I was looking.
Okay, so you're looking for a crypto firm. What'd you find?
I found I mean there were a few options, right? Like I talked to a couple firms that at the time there were a lot of firms that had securities litigation practices that touched on crypto a little bit. I mean, maybe we'll get into this later, but a lot of crypto's law does touch on securities law. So people who
Sure.
are already in that space are really naturally positioned to be in crypto. But yeah, I ended up going to McDermott Will and Emery because I found a young partner there, Joe Evans. I think I was like 29 at the time. He was like 34, so he was only a little bit. He was only a little bit older than me, but he had just made partner and he was hiring people for this group. And he told the pitch he gave me was basically like, "Okay, you can go to these other firms, but if you come here, we're going to do crypto exclusively." And we're the crypto native people, and we're going to be able to develop a niche for ourselves and really carve out something special. And yeah, I mean that pitch just appealed to me, and I saw it as kind of a high risk move, and I rolled the dice and kind of bet it all on Joe.
You know, just for our audience and just kind of illustrate the small world nature of where we live, you know, Aaron and I had never met in person till today, and I certainly knew what he was doing, knew what he was up to. We have a lot of contacts in common, but totally separately, I found myself day drinking with his former boss at McDermott, Will and Emery about 3 weeks ago in New York. So that tells you how small the world gets. And I'm super familiar with Joe. What a great boss. What a great experience. Tell me what you were doing there.
Yeah, so I mean, I came in and really we were. It's interesting because we sat in the litigation department and we did do some litigation. You know, one of the first things I did off the bat was I wrote a complaint against a DAO. We ended up we litigated that for a little while. We did some litigation stuff, but I came in and because our practice was sector specific rather than practice area specific, I ended up doing a lot of regulatory work. So I worked for a lot of large cryptocurrency firms, helping them develop strategy to operate in the United States, in different areas of the United States, in different areas of law, figure out basically like how to get these products off the ground. And that was as we went along. I did, still litigation. I did bankruptcy work too, but I did a lot more of the regulatory stuff, which is what kind of fed into what is now Brogan Law.
So now, okay. So before we jump into the big move that you made, tell me what, while you were at McDermott, I imagine there was, a lot of ups and downs in the crypto world. Maybe ups for some aspects and downs for others. You saw the rise and fall of NFTs. You saw, exchanges come on, exchanges get wellness notices, big time litigation gets started. A lot of very important opinions came out during that time. How are you taking this all in? Is this confirming that you made the right choice, or is this kind of suggesting to you, gosh, is this going to exist? 3 years from now, if I spent a lot of time and really blown up my career on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've been in crypto for long enough, you probably had some existential moment where you thought,
Sure.
did I mess this all up by choosing this sector? Yeah, I mean, I started at McDermott early 2022.
Okay.
I think I accepted the offer in like January, and 2022 was a very tumultuous year in the industry. I mean, we had
Sure.
3AC blew up, Terra Luna blew up, then Voyager collapsed. We actually ended up being creditors counsel on the Voyager bankruptcy, so
Gotcha.
we got a lot of exposure to it. And then from there you had all of the kind of earn programs having problems. Gemini had problems. Genesis, who administered their earn programs, had problems, and then FTX is obviously the biggest one. And we ended up being across a lot of these one way or another, particularly as Voyager's creditor counsel.
Sure.
We did the investigation in that case, took it kind of all the way to the end, and then we ended up representing the company after the plan was confirmed, and we did litigation against FTX, various other
So,
players.
you got me thinking here. One of the things I'm thinking is you're kind of on the forefront, right? You're touching all these big time, piece of litigation, bankruptcy, adversary proceedings coming out of that. Whatever it is that you're doing, it seems like this is great for a young lawyer, like to really, build his reputation, build his knowledge base. What made you start thinking, I want to go and do this on my own, as opposed to getting access to some of these huge industry leading clients?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did have concern that I was going to lose access. If I left, I was just going to be a nobody and not have any purchase on the market at all. But I think I really just wanted to test myself and see what I was able to do. I had an instinct that I was going to be able to give really good advice to lots of different clients. I felt like I was the best, and if I went out, the market was going to recognize that talent. And I
Was
thought I could
Joe giving
develop
you
it.
access to a lot of clients? Like you were dealing directly with them?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was the first hire into the group, so it was really just me and Joe for a long time. And as we went along, we hired more people who were great, and a lot of them are still there. I would
Yeah.
recommend you hire Brogan Law if you need crypto law support, but if not, McDermott is a great second option.
I
Uh,
love that. I love that.
but yeah, I mean, I got a lot of access. I was working directly with clients. I don't think I was a typical associate in my time at McDermott, where I really was. I felt like I was like the junior partner in that group in a lot of ways. The firm didn't always agree with me, which might have been part of the reason that I said, "Hey, I want to
That you
move
moved
on
along. Yeah.
and go start my own thing because I think I can do this on my own. Like I think I can lead a team by myself, and that's what I've done."
I just want to send a message to Joe here. Joe, I don't know if you're listening, but Aaron has thrown down the gauntlet. He's coming from McDermott, Will, and Emery, and he's going to take your business. And just be aware of that. He seems like he knows what he's talking about.
Hey, I'd love to work together on anything, Joe.
So, all right. So tell me. All right. So now we are in a space. You've been at McDermott. How long were you there before Brogan Law was born?
I was there for 2 years. I think I was there for like a year and 11 months. But I was basically there for 2 years. I left after 2 years, and then I took like a month off to go
What'd you
climb a
do?
mountain in Mexico.
Nice.
I went to Mexico City, climbed. I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's like the third highest mountain in Mexico, which was really fun. Came back, and actually, I didn't. My goal right away. I knew I wanted to do something on my own, but I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I don't know what shape it was going to take. And people started throwing me on crypto cases. I think because they knew I was knowledgeable. They knew that I was going to be able to bring like high quality professional work ethic to bear. And so people started sending me crypto matters, regulatory stuff, and I started kind of serving clients through just people I knew. And after doing that for a while, I realized, okay, well, if I'm doing this, I should set up a firm, get some liability protection. And then once I had set it up, once I had Brogan Law, I was like, well, I have a firm. I should probably go trying to find clients and making it a little bit more serious. And that was kind of how it progressed, and that's how we got to where we are now.
So one of the things we do on the podcast, we're really gearing this show to young entrepreneurs, professionals at law firms or in banks or, those types of folks. And we're trying to say, not just, hey, I left and I started a firm, because, sometimes that we gloss over things that may be second nature to us as lawyers, or, even second nature to people who've kind of been through the experience. So, kind of mechanically, how did it work? You got back from Mexico, you just climbed this mountain. What did you do exactly to start Brogan Law? And then what did you do exactly to bring in those first couple of clients?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I mean, I already had the clients, so I had a couple. But to start the law firm, it's really very easy, right? You just get a certificate that you're in good standing in the New York bar.
Sure.
You file a PLLC. You file some kind of filing for a PLLC with the Secretary of State of New York. And then there's a couple other paperwork things. You have to do a publication requirement. This is not a big part of Brogan Law's service, as you might be able to tell, but
Sure.
it's pretty straightforward, right? You just set up a professional entity in New York. I got a website which I designed myself. I created a logo here that I designed myself, and then I had a firm, and it existed. I had an address, and then from there, I was like, okay, well, I need to find clients. I have no idea how to do that. So I just started taking meetings with everyone I could find who had any idea
What
how
does that
to.
mean? You're taking meetings. How do you even know to get a meeting? How are people knowing? How do people know that you're up and running and they can call you for these services?
Well, nobody knew at first, for sure.
Okay.
Nobody knew that I was up and running, and that was a big problem, right? So I have a website that's set up. Now I go to my friends who already have small law firms, or people I know who are doing similar things, or people who are VCs, whatever. Anyone who's in the crypto space that I knew, literally any person who was in crypto at all, I texted, emailed, called, and said, hey, we should do a meeting. And then I just basically what I would do when I went into these meetings is I'd say, listen, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to start a law firm. I have done it. I know how to do the work. I know that my product is really good. I know that it costs half of what it costs to get it in Big Law. I think this is going to have product market fit immediately, but I have to find the people and I have to get my name out there. How did you do it? And then I just did that dozens of times. And over time, people sent me clients and I started writing too, which helped a lot.
Sure. No, I listen. I read a lot of what you wrote. Okay, so now you're up and running. Client calls you. You know, I'm sure that you've now learned how to retain clients and get them on retainer or take flat fees or whatever it is or however you do it. You're up and running. What's your level of you know? I always found when I started my law firm, which is a long time ago, that I remember the first few. I felt like I was kind of uh, swimming without a life jacket in the middle of the ocean, meaning like, there's nobody to catch me. There's no partner making sure that I'm doing things correctly, or there's no like group of lawyers that I'm working with that can kind of, I start bouncing ideas off and we're working together on documents and from either a corporate or a litigation or a compliance standpoint. How did you get the confidence to say, I can do this? I don't need a second pair of eyes, et cetera, et cetera. And did you ever consider bringing on a co-founder? Was that ever part of the mix?
But there's a few different pieces of this. For one, the stuff that I started out doing, which was really like go to market, product strategy, regulatory strategy for my clients, I had been doing for years at the highest level. And so I knew this stuff really, really well because the clients that I had been doing it with when I was at McDermott with Joe Evans were, bigger and higher stake clients than I started out with when I was at Brogan Law, right? And
Sure.
so I had already done it in the big leagues, and so I knew I could do it. So I was very confident that I could do this. And the other thing that helped me a lot was I very rarely did cases alone. Even though when I started, I was a solo at the law firm. Uh, I had other lawyers that I would work with, and we would execute of counsel agreements between our
Sure.
firms to do those cases. I would never advise the lawyer to take cases alone if you can avoid it. Like it's always better to have someone to bounce ideas off of, someone to
Sure.
look at your work product, just give it a sanity check, and that helps a lot too. But yeah, there's still times when you feel a little bit like you're sailing without a paddle. Particularly for
Oh,
me, like I was just
yeah.
worried I wasn't gonna be able to get clients, like
Sure.
because I had never done it. I had brought clients into McDermott a little bit, but I had a whole institution behind me, and I could sell them on, hey, we have this big law firm to give you. But when I was just selling myself in a box, I was like, I don't know if people are going to buy that. It turns out they did.
That's awesome. Just to kind of make this more real for people, can you think of any stories from your first few engagements that stand out with you? And you don't have to name the companies, but like some of the things that they've asked you to do, weird things that you had to kind of manipulate, think about differently, be creative in trying to solve their problem. Does anything jump out at you?
Yeah, there's a few. For one, I find that a lot of crypto companies and a lot of early companies in general like to have some kind of a sweepstakes product. I don't know if you've ever engaged with sweepstakes law, but
Many,
this
many
comes up.
times.
But this comes up a lot. So I found myself often developing like strategies to get into sweepstakes or to be a game of skill, and to avoid gambling law. It's
Sure.
just like it's a weird, just very common area of law that comes up for a lot of my clients. And so, yeah, my first year I was developing strategies for there where for some of these games, for some of these like crypto applications, maybe nobody has ever done anything exactly like this before, and
Sure.
you're just making it up. And so that involves a lot of, tireless research, just trying to figure out what the closest analog is to what your product is. And revealing, being disclosing the risk to your client and helping them get to comfort with a product that is novel. Another thing that came up in my first year that was, I guess, and again, it's stuff that I had done before, so I was pretty ready to do it. But we had a client that we were doing their regulatory strategy for. We were helping them set up this product, like figure out how to work with different aspects of their product, and they already had a fairly big audience. They had, I think, millions of users already. It was a big. They were fairly successful before they came to us. And in the process of doing that, another very large entity in the crypto space basically took issue with something they were doing and threatened to sue them. And
Wow.
so then we were negotiating for 6 months to basically avoid a lawsuit and figure out a way through this. And that was an early test, I think, for the firm
Sure.
when we were up against much larger law firms and really held our own.
So
I
let me
thought.
ask you something. Let's move to the business part of running a law firm.
Yeah.
Are you paying yourself? Are you paying your bills right now, or are you going through? Did you go through a period like every lawyer that I've ever chatted with that started their own firm? They went through a struggle in the beginning, and then they kind of got back to the point where they started exceeding where they came from. Did that happen for you, or did you have enough clients going in right away where you kind of made a smooth transition?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty steady growth for me. I was really lucky in my first year that people gave me clients to start. So I was
Sure.
making money from the beginning. I wouldn't say like I definitely wasn't raking in new clients from the beginning. Like I
Sure.
wasn't bringing in new clients of my own right away. And I was definitely concerned about it at times, but I ended up making enough money in my first year to basically cover all of my living expenses. I
Sure.
didn't really bring anything home, but I was basically able to cover my life, and I was thrilled with that for the
Yeah,
first
that
year.
is that is a great benchmark. How old are you right now, and how old were you when you started the firm?
I'm 32 now. I was 30 when I started the firm, I think, 31.
Do you find that's an advantage? I deal with a lot of what I'll call crypto entrepreneurs, people who are in the space, who many of them have been in the space for a long time. And I got about 16 years on you, but I still find that a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with are much younger. I imagine that's a big advantage for you because instead of talking to some senior attorney, white hair, etc., they're talking to a guy their age. Have you found that to be a big advantage?
Yeah, I think people do value that, like being able to have a connection, and it's a little bit helpful to be in the same age range as some of the founders. A lot of my founders are around the same age as me, but a lot of my founders are older than me, and some of them
Okay.
are younger than me. I mean,
Sure.
it's across the board. I think I thought that it was going to be an advantage, but it probably is less than I expected. I think what's more helpful is being an entrepreneur, talking to these entrepreneurs, because I think we just understand each other better than maybe some big law attorneys who have never taken a risk in their life and aren't as naturally inclined to understand the risks that cryptocurrency companies take on a day-to-day basis.
Have you ever found it to be a negative? You're a young lawyer. You came out in 2018. You're in this new space, which you're probably one of the most knowledgeable people in. But have you ever kind of run up against people having diverse expectations about what they want in their lawyer?
I'm sure it is. I mean, I'm sure there are clients that I haven't gotten because they were looking for somebody who was older or someone who was uh, I know a lot of cryptocurrency firms look to lawyers who were at regulatory agencies, which I wasn't.
Sure.
Uh, so yeah, I'm sure at times that I've lost a client because I wasn't older than I am, but I really think I'm able to make the argument very well that in this space I'm among the most experienced lawyers that you're going to be able to retain because I have been doing it for many years at the highest level.
So before we jump in and talk about some of the specific things you're doing at Brogan Law, let's take a little pivot. Tell me, when you start your own company, as many entrepreneurs and many kind of people who start their own law firms, their own financial companies, even a wealth management company within a bigger enterprise, they see a hit to their personal life. Like, I don't know if you're married or if you have a partner or what your story is, but have you been able to maintain a balance between all that goes into making this a successful enterprise as well as keeping your sanity and your obligations on the personal side?
Yeah, I mean it is a challenge at times. as I'm sure everybody who starts their own business experiences, where, for instance, like I release a newsletter every Sunday, the Brogan Law newsletter on Substack. I recommend you subscribe and check it out.
Well, why don't you give us, where can we find it?
Substack, Brogan Law newsletter.
Perfect. We'll make a highlight of that. We love pitching our visitors the stuff they're doing. So by all means,
anytime I get a chance to plug, I do. But so I write that every Sunday, right? And it's about 3,000 words every week. So that takes me 10 to 15 hours to write. So I used to hang out with my friends on Sundays.
yeah.
And now I really can't. I mean, I basically my whole Sunday I spend writing. And I think it's well worth it. I mean, it's just so rewarding to have your own project and be able to see it blossom and make it work with your own effort. But it definitely does affect my personal life a little bit. But you got to understand, like, I came from being at McDermott. My first year there, I think I built like 3,100 hours all in.
That's insane.
And so I was
what
already
a shit boss you must have had.
Yeah, I was. Well, yeah, it was. It worked out well for me.
Good.
But I was working a lot, and so it wasn't. I went from working a lot on other people's things to being able to work 100% on my own things, and if anything, it just made it easier. But yeah, it is definitely a balancing act. I'm always trying to figure out how to optimize my time.
So before, I want to talk about something specific that I think you know a lot about: event-based contracts. How did you get into that world, and explain what that is, what the industry is, and the changes we've seen recently, and the rise of some of the bigger players, and like how you got into it and what you're doing in the space?
Yeah, I've been aware of prediction markets for a long time. I think, and I've tried to think about this before when I first became aware of it. I think it was when I read Nate Silver's first book, The Signal and the Noise. I think it went into the theory of prediction markets, and that was back like 2014 or something. I was still in college, but when I first started Brogan Law, I just fortuitously got a client who was a prediction market, and I thought back.
Before we jump in, what is a prediction market for anybody that has no familiarity with it? What are we talking about?
Okay, a prediction market is an intermediary that matches bids and asks for some proposition. So, will something or will something not happen? So, it's generally applied to like major events. For instance, you might be familiar with the election. There were a lot of prediction markets that were getting publicity, Polymarket, Kalshi.
So you're betting. You're betting on an event, correct?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Like,
right.
In theory, a prediction market is a financial product. So any derivative, if you call a derivative a bet, then yeah, it's a bet. But it's a regulated in the United States, at least Kalshi and Crypto.com and some other regulated players in the industry are financial products. But yes, you put down money based on whether you think a proposition will or will not happen. And the outcome of that is that the prediction market, by matching different bids and asks on this market, is able to spit out a market price. And that market price, because of the way it's set up, it's usually dollar or $100 contracts, is effectively a prediction of how likely some event is to happen. And if you look at the literature, people like Robin Hanson say, okay, this price, the market price that it's going to spit out, is going to be an effective prediction of how likely an event is to occur.
You tell me, and I don't mean to split hairs here. If I go and I make a bet that the Denver Nuggets, we're here in Colorado, are going to beat the Clippers tonight, that is the event, right? And they are going to come out victorious. Versus I go on any of the many sports books and I make a bet that the Nuggets are going to beat the Clippers. Tell me, is there a difference, and what is it?
So I actually just wrote about this there's a journalist called Dustin Gauker. He has a Substack called Event Horizon, and I wrote a newsletter about this for him. But it's in terms of the law, I think it's overlapping, right?
Okay.
It is both within the definition of an event contract, which is a subset of swap under the Commodities Exchange Act. And it is also, I mean, it depends on the state, so I can't tell you for sure, but it is also likely within state gambling law, right? And so in that sense, there's not necessarily a fundamental difference. There is a difference in the way the markets are administered. If you go on DraftKings or FanDuel and you buy a bet, right, you're betting against DraftKings or FanDuel. Whereas if you go onto Kalshi or Crypto.com and place a similar, or you buy a contract that has a similar exposure to outcomes, right? You're betting against, or your counterparty in that is another participant in the market. It's not
Who's on
Crypto.com
the other side? Right.
who's on the other side, right?
Okay.
And that makes a big difference because if you look at FanDuel's DraftKings, they have a big incentive to try to keep the good bettors out, right? If
Yeah.
you're a winner, then in most states, they're allowed to limit your bet size down to trivial amounts, down to a couple dollars. So if you're somebody who is a sharp like Haralabab Vulgaris, right? You're not going to be allowed to use DraftKings, FanDuel to bet. And that also is probably going to decrease the quality of the market because you're taking the smartest participants out of the market. That's going to move the market price. The market is going to be biased against, your fish, so to speak. So this is a big difference, but it is around the margins and the core of the products. There's a lot of overlap.
No, listen, I'm sold on that explanation. I think that was very well articulated. Coming from a policy standpoint, you and I have read a lot about this over the last, probably like the 4 months since the election. Are prediction markets, the legitimacy and the legality of prediction markets like Kalshi in our election, is that a good thing? Is that a negative thing? Or is it simply a thing that is indifferent, whether it's good or bad?
I think it's good myself. I mean, I think that it's good to develop high quality sources of information, and that's what I think prediction markets have the potential to do. And I think if you look at, for instance, Polymarket just predicted the Canadian election successfully, but previously when and Polymarket and Shane would say, we're not ones predicting it; the users are predicting it. I should make that clear.
Sure.
But
It's a great
if you
point. That's
look
a
at
great point.
yeah, if you look
And
at
it
the
goes to
U.S.
your explanation of they're not making any bets. They're not playing a role. They are just facilitating this.
Exactly, yeah. But if you look at the U.S. election, it it had a higher percentage of Donald Trump winning than the aggregators did. So if you look at, for instance, Nate Silver said it was a toss-up. I actually think Nate Silver is a pretty sophisticated participant. I know that can be controversial at times, and people don't love him, but I think that his model is very good. But I think that the ability that Polymarket has that he doesn't have is to develop new information. And what happened in Polymarket was people came in, like there's a famous whale from France called Teo, and he came in and did his own polls. He's like the polling methodology that people are using for like the Wall Street Journal polls or Ipsos or whatever, right? Their methodology is deficient. My theory is that I have a better methodology. He went out, he did his own polls. He decided that Trump was going to win based on his polls, and he put that money into the market. And a lot of people doing that in aggregate creates a signal and gives you better information. So that's why I think it's good. There's another reason, which is these markets are going to exist no matter what. My philosophy of gambling or of risk assets is that there's a fundamental desire that people have to use these things, right? If you meet money and an event, people are going to try to get exposure to the outcome of the event, whether it's because they think they're smart, because it's fun, because it gives you a dopamine rush, whatever reason people are going to do it. And doing it in a regulated way, doing it through a federally regulated market is, I think, the best outcome for the welfare of those people. Because if you are a gambling addict in an unregulated market, you can lose your house, you can lose everything, and you can lose that in a regulated market too. But in the regulated market, you're not going to also lose your teeth.
Yeah, I think it's controversial. One of the things I kind of want to look before we move on from event-based markets and maybe some of the other kind of maybe some unintended consequences is I think your point is incredibly good. This individual went out, they sought their own information, they arrived at a conclusion and made their bets accordingly. But what happens when it goes the other way? Say, in going back to our election, and forget our election. Let's pick a smaller race. I think there was, congressional seats that were very close. Let's say I'm going to go and I'm going to bet whatever, $1 million on X politician to win. And then to ensure it, I'm going to go and I'm going to donate in a smaller election. A little money goes a long way. And I'm going to put 200,000 into that election just to ensure that it happens. Is that something, one, do you think it could occur? And two, do you think that's a negative aspect of allowing prediction markets?
I think people already have very strong incentives to affect the outcomes of elections. I think this is a good point as to, like you shouldn't be able to have a market that is based on whether a person gets hit by a car, right? Like that's a bad market.
Bad idea.
Although
Right.
although you could say they already exist in the insurance industry,
Sure.
it's
Sure.
it's a bad idea for that to be a public unregulated or relatively less regulated market. And if you look at the Commodities Exchange Act, these are already excluded. They're already, if you look at I think it's 40.11 of the regs, right? They say terrorism, war, assassination. These are things that can't be a part of regulated event contracts for exactly this reason, because it just creates a perverse incentive. But with respect to elections, I mean, look, Elon Musk just spent $20 million trying to get a justice elected in Wisconsin. So
Sure.
I think the incentives are already there. And is it distortionary to have the economic, like a market exposure as well? Maybe a little bit, but I just don't think it is going to fundamentally change the incentives that people have to participate monetarily in these markets.
I think that's very well put. And I'll tell you a little side note. When the elections were going on, I was following the prediction markets very closely, and I was posting about it on LinkedIn, kind of what I was seeing. And, you know, regardless of who I thought was going to win or who I wanted to win, I was just saying, if the polls are showing, Trump, it being more of a toss up, but Kalshi is giving me 3-1, I was going to put some money on Harris just to beat the odds. And, I started writing about like the ways to different people were approaching it, and I actually ended up showing up in a bunch of different Bloomberg articles out of London for foreigners that are watching our markets. And here's this new aspect to the market. So I thought it was a very fun thing. And my opinion, it's here to stay. I think it's one of those things, like once it's ingrained, like sports betting, it's very hard to kind of move along from it. I'll tell you, one of the things that does concern me as somebody who's very concerned about our community, our future, and everything else is that, and it's less with events-based contract and more about sports betting, but if you look at the states where sports betting is legal, the number of bankruptcies is going up by 25 to 30%. Credit scores are going down. Debt actions are going up. Suicides are going up. And I'll tell you, that is a concern to me from a community standpoint. And so I buy kind of what you're saying about prediction market, or excuse me, event-based markets, but I'm concerned about where it might get to, where people just start, maybe who a little bit younger, these individuals who fall into these kind of victimizations tend to be, young males. And I'm a little bit concerned that, young males are going to be a little bit more irresponsible with their money. And maybe that's part of growing up, but it's still something that does concern me.
Yeah, I think it's it's a real issue. There's no doubt about it. There's definitely risks of, in any kind of high dopaminergic activity, there's risk of compulsive behavior. And I think it's pretty clear that lots of people have that for different kinds of betting. I mean, this is what really we're talking about is sports betting as it's been regulated by states. I don't know what the best way to do that is, but I just think prohibition is a bad solution.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna have these markets one way or another, I think it's better to do them through the federal model, where there's not this incentive for the markets to remove the high quality bettors, where there's not an incentive for them to bring on more low quality bettors. I mean, that's the other end of the coin, right? Is that if you're a DraftKings or a FanDuel's, you're incentivized to bring your fish, your people who are going to be the lowest quality bettors, to bring them back, to get them to bet more and more. You're incentivized to make it an addictive product. And yes, the federal markets have some exposure to this incentive, but it's less than it is when you're the counterparty. So that's why I think like doing those prediction markets is probably modestly protective against this issue. It's not going to be enough. I mean, there has to be other policy to figure it out. And I don't know what the solution is, but you're right that it is a problem.
It's very interesting. I think that you've put that very well, and I think a lot of what's going to happen over this is kind of a novel thing, and for us as lawyers, I think it's been really interesting reading these cases where the the fundamental concept is preemption that's happening around the country with, states trying to shut down different things. And then, the company, Coinbase, crypto.com, or whoever comes in argues preemption, and they tend to be winning. So I've kind of followed that litigation, and it's kind of one of those things it's like for people like you and me, it's like the Nuggets Clippers game. It's fun to watch, it's fun to see the players, and then fun to read the opinions.
Yeah, Kalshi just won in New Jersey a couple of days ago. I think it was really interesting. I mean, I've been predicting that they were going to win since December. I mean, the first article I've been writing about this since the Kalshi case is in the District of DC in August of last year. That was the first article I published on it. I've published like a dozen articles about prediction markets in different outlets, in the Street and CoinDesk, in Dustin Gauker's newsletter, in my own newsletter, all over the place. And I've been predicting that the prediction markets were going to win these battles, because I just think if you look at the text of the Commodities Exchange Act, it's pretty clear that it preempts states regulating these markets. And I think, I first predicted in December with respect to the crypto.com markets that it might go all the way, and preemption might prevent states from issuing their own licenses for gambling.
That's
and
incredible.
We don't know, who knows whether that's going to happen or not. But I think if you look at the decision that came out in New Jersey yesterday, it seems very plausible that that's where this is going.
It's funny. It was like late night, maybe like midnight or later, maybe a week ago. And my good friend over at crypto.com, Justin Wales, sent me a text because they had just filed in Maryland along the same line. So it should be fun to watch. It's fun for guys like you and me. And we'll have some fun with it. And, maybe at some point when we have some more opinions out and we see where the industry has gone and where the law has gone, we'll get you back on and we'll chat about it. So,
yeah, and a big shout out to Justin Wales, by the way, friend of the Brogan Law newsletter. One of my first interviewees.
Love that. He opened up Adjacent Pod with its first episode, and he's going to be closing the first season of Adjacent Pod in a few weeks here to talk about his new book that's going to come out, which sits on my shelf and gets used very often to kind of look at different issues.
Yeah, he's a great mentor to a lot of young lawyers.
That's awesome. So listen, we're kind of at the piece of the podcast where we get a little bit away from the stuff that you and I do daily, the intricacies of crypto regulatory law and the like, and cases that are happening. And what I want is for listeners who tend to be, again, young entrepreneurs, young lawyers, young financial types, young, or people, I keep saying young, but it tends not to be people who are going off and trying to do something on their own outside of their 9-to-5 job and trying to make it a full-time thing. And what I think is valuable to them is that they get in your head a little bit, not just how you think about this or that, but how you think about life. And so we're going to do a series of 5 quick, questions just to give me some short answers. You're in New York, you're in Brooklyn. I spent a lot of time in New York and Brooklyn specifically. If you have 2 hours free and you can't do any work, what are you spending that time doing?
I would probably go for a bike ride, honestly. I really enjoy biking around the city. My bike just got stolen, which was super sad, but yeah, biking around the city.
Shout out to Manhattan, or shout out to Brooklyn.
Yeah, it was in Manhattan. Thank you, West Village. But yeah, that would probably be what I would do. I would just bike around the city. I just love the energy of Manhattan, and I love being outside around the people and getting different exposure to different areas. I just love it. I think it's super fun.
That's awesome. So you got people coming into town to see you, and you have an opportunity to take them to your favorite restaurant in New York. Where are you taking them?
I usually take them to Keen's. Keen's is usually my choice. I don't know if you've ever been Keen's Steakhouse. It's on 34th
No, I have not
Street,
been.
I think. Yeah, Keen's is incredible. Get the taste of mutton, get the prime rib. 34th Street.
Okay.
You gotta go.
34th, east side, west side.
It's right in the middle. It's right next to K-Town.
Okay.
So Keen's is one of the oldest steakhouses in the city. They have pipes on the ceiling from their pipe club, which has members like Teddy Roosevelt, Babe Ruth. But it's not some tourist trap. It's one of the best steakhouses in the city. It's a great place to have a few cocktails if that's your thing. You get a giant steak. They serve mutton, which there are not many places in the city that serve mutton, but they're famous for it. I just can't recommend Keen's highly enough. That's where I take people when they come.
For our listeners, how do you spell that?
Keens.
Awesome. I'm putting on my list. I should be in New York this summer. I'm going to make a point to stop by.
Well, you tell me and we'll go.
I can't wait. It's funny. Have you met, one of our guests on the podcast maybe a month or so ago was Sumit Chugani. Have you ever hung out with him?
Yeah, we back in the day when I still worked with Joe, Sumit was a figure in some of our business dinners and lunches. I
That,
think he was there when we went to during Consensus. Joe took a number of McDermott clients to a steakhouse in Austin. I think we ordered the entire menu. Uh, it was good.
that's amazing. That's actually how I met Joe. So that tracks very well.
And I
All
like to
right.
keep it cloaked as a future Brogan Law client too. Sumit, if you're watching,
Awesome. That
reach out
is
to us.
that is great. I will reinforce that. Sumit and I chat quite a bit. All right. So if you could have a wish, anything in the world, and it's going to come true tomorrow, what is it?
Oh man, here's the thing. Like, I don't really want things. I just like the grind. That's just the truth of it. Is that I wouldn't wish myself any outcome because the part that I enjoy is the fight to get there, and the test of your will and your desire to reach some outcome, and that's what I like more than any outcome. So the only thing I would wish for tomorrow is another day of health that I can keep grinding and keep working.
Good for you. That's a great answer. So we kind of this is the one that every guest gets asked, and I love the question. What's your favorite moment each day?
Favorite moment each day? Uh, a really good question. I think in the morning, right when I wake up, I tend to wake up relatively early these days, and the first hour I lie in bed, I just read like all the different newsletters and writers that I like. I read Matt Levine is awesome. Matt Iglesias I read. Cartoons Hater, a great Substack that I read every morning. And I just really love it. I just love engaging with this stuff and being kind of on an intellectual plane for the first hour of my day. That's probably one of the best moments of my day.
That's great. That's great. So this next one is going to kind of track into kind of something we already discussed. Is that it's easy for guys like you and I and others who've founded companies or law firms or this to get wholly pulled in and spend all your time doing it. So my question to you is, how do you separate it? How do you make yourself stop talking about crypto law or your clients or bringing in new clients or what's happening in this quarter that? How do you make yourself stop?
Yeah, I'm not great at it, I would say. I do have some hobbies. I play
What are your
golf.
hobbies? That's a great answer. What's your hobbies?
Yeah, I play golf. I've been playing golf my whole life, and I'm
Handicap?
okay. I'm like a 6 now. I was like around scratch. I was like a 1 when I was younger, and I could play more regularly. But I still play pretty well, and I really, if I go out and have a competition, I really enjoy that, and that will take me away mostly. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes work finds you on the golf course, but yeah, that's one thing. But yeah, man. Other than that, I think about it all the time. From the moment I wake up until I go to sleep, I start working immediately, and I am really in bed doing it until like midnight when I go to sleep.
For those golfers that are listening, where did you go up, and what was your favorite course growing up?
I grew up in Maine. I
Okay.
grew up on Perputtock Golf Club in Maine. It's a private course. It's like a pretty blue collar private course, so it's not like a country club or anything.
Sure.
I was really lucky to have family who played golf, and I got to start really young and played a lot. I actually worked there too. I was a greenskeeper for a number of years in my youth. I started cutting grass, and then I graduated to greenskeeper until eventually I figured out that I was probably better to be a professional. Uh, and yeah, that's where I grew up. My favorite place to play growing up, I don't know. I mean, I played Paputnik a lot. I didn't really have any money, so I couldn't play too many private courses. These
Sure.
days, I play Bethpage Black a lot, which is on Long Island. I'm sure
Sure.
many people know it. It's a famous course, but I get out there. I just got out there last Sunday, play a match. But as much as I can, I get out there. Marine Park in Brooklyn is great. A lot of those things. I actually wrote a book about golf called "Let the Big Dog Eat."
All
Uh,
right, Let the Big Dog Eat by Aaron Brogan. Let me ask you a
a few
question.
years ago.
I always use the analogy of when I have a great moment, I call it a golf shot because I played golf enough in my life to know the feeling of when I just connect perfectly, the ball does exactly what I want it to
Yeah.
do, and I get a great outcome. What is the shot you think about saying, if all my shots could be like that, I'd be the next Tiger Woods? What is the shot that comes to mind?
That's funny. There's a few. I think the one that comes to mind the most was I was playing a tournament when I was in high school. I was playing a junior club championship, and I had hooked my drive to the left, and I was kind of in a grove of trees on the seventh hole at Perputic where I grew up, and I was like 160 out from the green, but I had no straight path, and so I hit it out to the left
Would
and
you
cut
pull out
it
a
back.
6 or a 5, or would you hit it with 7?
I think it was like a 7. And I was
Okay.
younger then. I was 17. I wasn't as strong.
Okay.
Uh, so I hit it out to the left and cut it back onto the green and made par. And then I
Wow.
went on to win that tournament. And so that was a great moment. I do think about that sometimes.
That is amazing. All right, so one last question, and it's kind of, back to the podcast here. Again, we are kind of our audience is made up of young entrepreneurs, young lawyers, young finance types, young people doing things. What is one piece of advice you have for somebody who's about to leave their McDermott, Will and Emery, leaving Joe Evans? They're going on their own. What piece of advice do you have for them?
Everything you want is on the other side of pain, and risk is just pain tolerance. And doing things that are hard is necessary to get anything you want. So I think I see this in a lot of people is that they get up against something and you get a little bit of wishy-washy or you're afraid to do it, and that happens to all of us. But you have to, when you get to that pain, you have to push through that pain, and that's the most important. That's the most important thing to achieving anything that you want, basically, and progressing because life will absolutely put you on a path of comfort all the way into your grave, and it's only the desire to deviate from that and the willingness to tolerate the pain of deviating from that that will put you anywhere else.
That sounds like it came from Eastern philosophy. Well, Aaron, I really appreciate you joining us on Adjacent Pod. Before we kind of wrap up, I want to thank you for coming on, and I'm certain you will come back. We'll get you in season 2 or season 3 when like big things are happening in your space. Kind of the way I wrap up our episodes is I try to glean something from the individual that was a guest on the show and share it with the audience as, hey, take note of this because it's probably led to their success, or it's something that caught my attention or the attention of our readers. I chat with a lot of people that listen and I take all the feedback. And so I try to kind of glean the lessons. And what I take from Aaron is this. Aaron and I have never met in person. This is actually the first time we're seeing each other. But Aaron is kind of part and parcel in my life because he writes a lot. He posts a lot. He reached out, I think, and we became connections online. And then, he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to come on the podcast. And I will tell you, it's that kind of energy that separates the people who go off on their own and make it from the people who go off on their own and, unfortunately, a short time later, they're back working for the man. And so I highlight that lesson because I think Aaron is very good at it. And I think he embodies that skill set of networking, making sure people know who he is, what he's capable of. So when the opportunities present themselves, the world conspires to create an opportunity. Aaron's name is the one that comes to mind. And I appreciate that about you. I appreciate you coming and giving us an hour of your time. It's incredibly valuable. I know how much you do. And so thank you. We'll see you again. And I look forward to connecting in person next time I'm out in New York and head over to Keen Steakhouse. I look
We'll
forward
go
to
to
it.
Keen Steakhouse. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure, a really interesting conversation. I can't wait to be back. Everyone that's watching, hire Brogan Law. We're the best law firm in the crypto space to get. Half the price of Big Law, so it's hard to beat that.
Awesome. All right, man. We will see you.